Welcome to Season 2 of Coming Home to Ourselves, where we aim to bridge the gap between the sacred and modern day responsibilities, barriers, and life. I am Denise Alyssa, your host, channel, mystic, and guide, and I aim to empower you to become your own self-healer and an embodied co-creator of your life, supporting you in shedding what no longer serves and aligning you with your most authentic and connected version of self. Please note that I am not a medical professional and nothing said in this podcast should be misconstrued as medical advice or replacement of such. If you'd like to know more about my background, training, or the workshops, ceremonies, or other work I offer, please visit www.denisealyssa.com. Hi, friends. Today we have Renae Fieck, who is a feminine leadership coach, a cycle syncing expert, and a business strategist. She has a background in occupational therapy, somatic healing, and breathwork, and she blends science-backed productivity, feminine wealth energetics, and cyclical business strategy to help women create success in flow. So you can imagine how excited I am to have her. She is the founder of the Flow Collective and the author of Cycle Sync Your Business. Renae teaches women how to align their business with their body's natural rhythms so that they can work less, make more, and lead with confidence. And you all know that I am all about entering the flow and letting that lead your life for health and for abundance and for recovery from complex chronic diseases, and really just as an act of empowerment when we are living in this society that asks us to be so conformed and to live completely out of sync with ourselves and disconnected from self, really. So Renae, thank you for being here. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm honored to be here.
So tell us a little bit about you, like how did you even get into this? I feel like most people who enter this line of work, they have a little bit of a coming home to themselves story within that. Do you want to share a little bit about what got you here?
Yeah. If you had asked me, 10, 15 years ago that I would be here talking about periods and cycles and stuff, I would have never believed it. Like, it would not have been what I thought I would be doing. It was really, truly out of pure necessity. So about 9 years ago, I was pregnant with my third baby, and I got what I thought was my dream job, working at the Children's Hospital. And then my husband was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And we had so much happen that year, from ER visits, 911 calls, having a baby. My husband couldn't drive because of the tumor and seizures and things. And we just had this, when you're faced with something like that, you realize life only happens once and you are never guaranteed tomorrow. Like, none of us are guaranteed tomorrow. And I think at the time I was living so much for the future. I was in survival mode of when things get easier, when the kids get older, when this or when that. There was always this like forward projection that I would live the life I wanted one day. Like when kids got older, I was able to work more, whatever it was, and realized, like, what if that day never comes? And what if one of us passes away tomorrow? What will I still feel like I lived to the fullest? And that was the moment that I was like, I want to start something of my own. And so I started in network marketing, as like many women do, starting in that space, and really just got so ingrained with these mantras and these messages of, your dreams don't work unless you do, and you just got to keep pushing. You got to do the things no one else is willing to do, and really got myself to a place of complete burnout in the process. And my dreams were so big. Like, my dreams are so big. I'm a big dreamer just overall. Like, that's one of my strengths. And I wasn't willing to stop. Like, I was like, I'm burned out. I'm burnt to a crisp, but like, I have to figure something out. Like, I want this to happen so badly. And kind of got to a place where I wondered if, like, maybe there's just something I don't have. Like, maybe, there's something that other entrepreneurs have that I just don't have. But coming from a family of entrepreneurs, I'm like, dude, if it's in my DNA, it's in my DNA. Like, this has got to work. And in that process, like tried every different productivity strategy. I invested tens of thousands of dollars in coaches and mentors, like did all of the things, and discovered how men and women are just so different. And that on a biological level, like our hormones are impacting us so much every single day. And it really shapes the way we build our businesses. It shapes the way we show up with our families. It shapes the way we work in so many different ways. And I started just implementing it in the back end of what I was doing in my business and started noticing how much it made a difference. Like, this is like truly how I'm like having brain fog right now. Like it makes sense based on where I'm at in my menstrual cycle. And I'm like so sharp. I get it. I understand. And once I started sharing it with my clients at the time, they were like, oh my gosh, this is what we want to know. Like we want to know more about this. And so since then, it's really morphed into incorporating, yes, a lot of the biology, a lot of the nervous system, a lot of like the neuroscience, productivity sorts of things, but also this like spiritual, energetic kind of component too of really just how men and women are so different, and that most of the strategies and the tools and the systems that were built out there are based on men's biology and energetic makeup and not women. And that's why so many women are burning out. Yeah.
Oh my God, exactly. And even just, you can take that so much further through our society, like all of our medical care, all of our, like so many of our studies, such a disproportionate number of our studies on different like health conditions and supplements and medicines and the reactions to various things are all done on men. And women are just, we're out here trying to figure it out ourselves, right? Like just trying to get by and trying to make this work on our own. And so, there's so much of your story that really, really resonates with me. I haven't shared about this recently at all, but it was a big piece of my life for a long time before getting sick. And I was doing network marketing. I was doing some fitness coaching through network marketing. And during that, I mean, I loved it. I loved the community. I felt so empowered. I felt like I was accessing this sense of community that I had been seeking like my whole life. But during it was when my health completely collapsed for the first time. And at that time, I had 3 businesses. One was network marketing and the other 2 were not. And my entire sense of self-worth was based on my level of productivity.
Yeah. 100%. Like I remember that same, like when I was like bleeding at the knuckles and I reached out to my mentor and was like, hey, I'm not hitting the goals that I want. Like I really want to hit this goals. And she's like, well, if you're not hitting the goals, business is just a numbers game. You just have to do more. And I was like, I don't know how to do more. Like there's no more left in me. But that same, it was like all about how many people you could connect with, how many conversations you had, how many, like it was just all about numbers, like driven by how much you could do and not necessarily the efficiency or like I would say like even now I look at it as a lot of what we do in business doesn't move the needle in the first place. And I think that even that was like, how do I get more efficient with my time and my energy and focus on the things that really matter? Like they move the needle, they make me feel good. And I think that's the other big piece. When I talked to like the energetic piece, like it went from this place of just looking at biology, but women function so much better when we feel good. Like when you feel like joyful and you feel content and you feel pleasurable and you feel like joy, like when you feel good, you create so much better. Like a woman's body thrives in safety, like on a biological and energetic level. Like safety is a necessity for women, and in order for everything to function correctly. And if when we don't have safety, none of it does. And so we have all these women that are hustling and pushing and forcing themselves to create and putting their bodies in this place of overworked. And then we're discounting all of the creation and the power that we really have. But that's like a whole conversation.
I know, and I feel like I want to dive right into it, but we won't. Maybe we'll have to have another recording. I want to highlight one thing that you said, because it was saying that this was all about the numbers, that you just needed to go, 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 that you needed to do more all the time.
Yeah.
And what you were focusing on was not moving the needle. And
Mhm.
something that I see a lot in that is most of us are pretty programmed to believe that if we are not doing, then we are not going to get anywhere. So we
100%.
have this drive inside of us, this like survival drive, because most of us have been living in some state of like fight or flight since really early on in our lives, right? To the point where like we don't even know that we are living there because it's all we've ever known. And when
Yeah.
you're in that state of fight flight, you have to do, like, your body just has this drive inside of it that is like, I have to keep going, I have to keep pushing, I have to keep doing. And so we feel like we're meeting one of those biological needs through the doing. And we
Mhm.
feel like if we can keep doing, we're going to reach that goal that we are trying to get to. But we're never entering a sense of safety. We're never dropping back into ourselves. We're just like constantly running from the tiger,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then what? Like, that's just a road to burnout, but I feel like we're almost born into that.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I like looking back at my story. I think there's partly personality, and I think partly, like you said, there's the conditioning that we've had. Even if we look back at, where most of us were probably raised in the era where you get good grades and you go to college and then you get married and then you have your kids and then you get the good job, and like it's like this white picket fence type of messaging that we really got from a very early age, and it was really built on get good grades, work really hard in school, like do your best and all these things. And now as a parent, I'm so careful to catch myself. I'm like, oh, like I want them actually to do well in school and like try, but I also don't want to continue to perpetuate these same sort of patterns that I feel like I laid into, where it was all about working really hard to get the best grade, doing the extra credit, like doing doing everything I could to achieve. And it was all built on this achievement to, even when I had my kids and I took time off of work, I'd be home with them. Everything had to be productive, right?
Yeah.
I was a pediatric therapist. So like even when I was playing with the kids, I would be in my back of my head, this is all productive because I'm being really intentional about developing these different skills for them. Or, it's not just like, can we just play? Like, can we just be here? It was all very intentional and very productive all of the time. And I think there's some element that's good about that, but there's also this essence that it was a struggle for me to actually just rest, like just lay in a hammock and do nothing or take a nap, to get to the place where I am now, I can lay down on the couch and take a nap in the middle of the day without worrying about it and worrying about what I have to do or worrying what's come next. Like that took me a very, very long time to get to that place. And I think,
Yeah.
like you said, most of us aren't conditioned that way. And so there's this pressure of, even when we sit down to quote unquote rest, we're being productive about it. Like there's an intention behind it. Like we're it's very boxed in, instead of, can we just let yourself rest and just like be pleasured and
Absolutely.
be enjoyment and be in that
Yes.
space? I think there's a lot of unlearning on a societal level that we have to do in that area. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And within family and household dynamics as well. I mean, your situation was very unique, where very unique and also not unique. Like, so many
Mm-hmm.
people go through scenarios like that kind of behind the scenes, where one of the partners gets sick or something happens, something big is happening behind the scenes, and all of a sudden the other person is carrying way more than what they ever thought that they were going to have to carry, right? And my heart really goes out to you during that time while you were sharing that story. And I'm picturing how vulnerable I felt while I was pregnant, and to add in a partner becoming so unwell so unexpectedly in such a massive way. Um, oh, I mean, it makes sense that you would have been running from the tiger in that, you know,
Yeah.
and
And
really struggling to access a sense of safety.
and even then, like if I were to look back at that time, I wouldn't have acknowledged that, right? So it's like running
Mm-hmm.
from the tiger. And even I've never thought about it till you just said this right now, but like, there's all this information about epigenetics and what we know about moms who are pregnant and the experiences they go through and how that impacts their children. And I sit there and I'm like, I wonder how and what that did to my daughter. Like how,
Yeah.
personality wise, or like what traits she has, or what things are based on the fact that I went through that during pregnancy. But at the time, if you had asked me, I would have said I was going through it really well.
Yeah.
And I do think that on the outside, I managed it very well. Like I didn't have breakdowns. I mean, I think partly working in healthcare helped me too, because as he's going through this whole brain surgery and outcomes and all that, I had worked in the neuro rehab. So I knew what to expect. I knew what was coming. I knew, to handle all of that. I think that helped on some aspect, but I do think there was this sense of numbing and not feeling and not
Yeah.
allowing myself to actually go to what was going on emotionally as a self-protective mechanism. And I think that is also what a lot of people do. I think a lot of people put themselves in this place of like, I'm managing everything really well. I'm doing it all. I'm doing it okay. And yet that's really more just like this numbing of what's actually happening inside. And that's, I think the body knows. And, to go into the idea of like somatics and stuff, is that the body knows, like the body knows what's happening, even if our conscious mind isn't allowing ourselves to go there and to process
Yeah.
that. And
Exactly.
the longer that stuff stays down there, the longer it's creating chronic problems. Like where, I've had since then I've had some different hip problems. And, I had a mentor of mine be like, I don't think that this is actually a physical thing. I think it's an emotional thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, I've had an MRI. I have torn labrums in both hips. I have hip impingements. And he's like, yeah, but I still think it's more emotional than it is physical. And so I went down the road. I went to a Reiki massage therapist. I kid you not. I walked out of that massage therapy office day and I never had pain in that hip again.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know
I
that both of
think
them are still torn, but I don't have the pain because it wasn't the actual physical.
exactly.
Yes.
I think that what you said is like spot on, that a lot of people, probably most people, go to that place where they are
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm doing everything fine. I'm carrying it fine. I'm managing well. I'm doing all the things I need to do, and I'm not feeling any of it.
Yeah. It's
And
easy
I
to go
think
there.
yeah, well, I think it's a
Mm-hmm.
survival mechanism. And I
Yeah.
think that when you're in it, you have to go there,
Yeah.
right? Because you have to still care for the two children you already have, take care of your own pregnancy that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
You have to take care of your partner who is going through this massive thing. And in order to carry all of that, you have to kind of disconnect from that part of self that's also in that themselves, that is grieving, that is scared, that is feeling the weight of
Yeah.
everything that is within that. And there's a lot of layers in that. And you still have to get up every morning and make your kid breakfast. You still have to do all of the driving and get your husband to his appointments. You still have to survive. And so we go into that place of survival. It's our bodies are incredibly intelligent and our minds are incredibly intelligent beings that bring us into that space that is going to support us in surviving that we are
Yeah.
in right now. But if we never go back there through somatics, through however you want to do it, through energy work, like however you want to do it, if we never go back there and allow ourselves to feel what we were not safe to feel in those moments, your body is going to
Yeah.
carry that somewhere. It's going to come out somewhere.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think that's one of the most beautiful things I've learned as time has gone on is our bodies. And if you've read the book, Our Bodies Keep the Score, or the
Yeah.
body keeps the score or something.
Yeah.
It's this idea too that like our body is so intelligent, and like every little layer of something, emotion. And they say that emotions we only experience for 60 seconds. It's the stories and the holding on to the emotion after that. But it's like our bodies experience so much. And until we become really present to all of those feelings and all of those processes and all of those, I work with a lot of my clients on like expressed desires. Like, what do you actually want? Because I think that's even a big piece of women is
absolutely
unexpressed desires and even unacknowledged desires, because our world has really conditioned women into staying small and not voicing those and not speaking out about them and not being them. And so when you put all of these pieces together, you have women who are having to push themselves and force themselves to operate in systems in society that does not operate with the way their hormones function. And they want to achieve, but they also now are achieving careers and building businesses and still taking care of the kids at home. And they're not allowing themselves to actually process anything or rest or do any things. And so it's like, no wonder that so many women are experiencing burnout. Anxiety and depression and chronic illness and things like that they're more likely to happen in women, because I think of all of these factors that are kind of contributing together. And so I feel so like it's so part of my role. Like, yes, I teach about cycle syncing and I teach women how to understand their cycles, but at the core of it's more of like, how do you actually understand and listen to your body? Because if you can understand and listen to your body and learn to lean into and trust your body, that's where the game changing happens. Like the cycle is just hey, this makes it fun and this makes it kind of easy to like become more effective and create more impact and be more productive and like all those things. But at the core of it, it's more of like, how do you really listen to your body? Like, how do you listen to yourself and permission yourself to go there? Like to desire what you desire, or to say, I actually need a break, or to, feel the emotion and to feel the heaviness and all these things. Like that's at the core of everything I do.
So let's go there.
Yeah.
Let's go there. So how does one align like their life to their body's natural rhythms, right?
Yeah.
And you can look at this through like a business perspective or a life perspective. I think they're probably very much intertwined when it comes to honoring the rhythm of your body. So for somebody, business or not, right?
Yeah.
How does one align that to their body?
Yeah. Well, I think it kind of first off goes back to understanding like how there's not a lot of research on women, right? Like you even said at the beginning, we don't understand a lot of how women and men are different. The research that's coming out particularly about women and how women are different has only been in the last like decade. Like it has not been that long that research is done on women. And it was only in the last couple decades that we're including women into medical research. So we're including them into medical research and now only actually researching them in the last decade. So this is a lot of new, and I think a lot of it will continue to evolve and continue to grow as we become more and more aware. But what we're knowing now is that when we look at the differences between men and women and how our hormones function, men function on a 24-hour rhythm with their testosterone. Women have a monthly cycle with estrogen and progesterone. And so where you are in that cycle impacts everything in your body, like from the brain down. Like the studies they've done on MRIs of the brain throughout the menstrual cycle is that different parts of your brain are active at different times. And so when you've had those days where you're like, I just have such brain fog and cannot think of anything, or you're like words are slipping behind you and you can't think of anything like the right word to say, chances are it had a direct impact based on where your hormones are at. Or those days when you feel so productive and you're just busting through the to-do list, chances are it's because of where your hormones are at. And so what understanding our cycles is, and like understanding how that impacts us, is really getting down to like, hey, what's happening in my body on a biological, hormonal, chemical, neuro-based way, and how is that impacting the way I show up? So when we look at the way estrogen, progesterone play out, there's 4 phases that make up in that month, and where you fall in those 4 phases is totally different. And every day is different. In fact, like your hormones are not the same day to day to day to day, whereas men, they are. And so the society that we function in functions in that 24-hour rhythm. It's really, really so important for women to understand, hey, where is my body today? And can I adjust the tasks or the load that I'm carrying today based on where those hormones are at and the capacity that I know I have? I'm sure you and your audience knows like the analogy of the spoons and the understanding like how many spoons of energy do you have? And your cycle is going to directly impact how many spoons of energy you have. And so if you know, hey, I'm in the cycle phase when I have almost 0 spoons, but I've got a ton of spoon tasks that I need to get done, then it gives you that awareness of how do I need to modify? How do I need to adjust? Or how do I plan ahead? So I'm putting those really heavy spoon tasks in the time when I'm gonna have the most amount of spoons of energy.
So how would somebody start that? Like, you know, somebody who's just entering this for the very first time, maybe they're just being introduced to this concept that their cycle is a 30-day or a 26, you know, whatever it is, a month-long cycle, and that a man's is 24 hours. Some people are going to be hearing that for the first time listening to this. So where would they even begin to start to go, oh, I want to plan ahead, and when my hormones are in this point, I'm likely to have a lot of spoons. And for if my hormones are in this point, I'm likely to have no spoons or very few. Where would they begin?
Yeah. I think the first one is actually just like tracking your cycle, tracking most women. I'm actually surprised there's a lot of women. It's not as common as we would think it is to actually track your cycle. And when I say track your cycle, I mean like tracking your period and tracking ovulation, because ovulation is more of the queen. She's the one running the show. The period just happens because the queen has done her job. And so when we track ovulation, we have a better understanding of what's actually happening inside the body. So I would say that's the first place to start. Even just every day, waking up and be like, where is my body at? How am I feeling today? Like, what does my body need today? Can be a really great place to kind of start in getting that first step. Like, you don't have to make massive changes in order to start seeing massive results. But I think once you start doing that, you can start then layering in the different phases of your cycle and how each of those impact the way you're showing up. So the first phase is your menstrual phase. Like most women know what that one is. That's when you're actively bleeding.
It's hard to miss.
It's hard to miss. I mean, if you're missing it, that's probably another story. We need to talk about that.
Yeah, you're aware, yeah.
But that one is your rest phase. Like that one is, I call it the recharge. Like the focus of that is you to recharge your cup, like refocus, like what are the goals? What are your intentions? What do you want to focus on this next month? Like, can we build up some of that energy again? Like, because naturally you're going to probably not have that much energy. Some women start to feel like their energy comes back there versus the luteal phase that comes before it. But most women, it's like not your peak productivity. Like you're not your peak energy type of phase. And so like lean into that. Let yourself recharge, because when you recharge, then you move into that next phase, which is when estrogen starts to climb. And estrogen has that same feel like testosterone does for men, where they feel productive, you feel great, you feel ready, you're taking on big projects, you might feel really creative, trying something new, doing all of those tasks on your to-do list that you don't love to do but need to get done. It's a really great time to do it because you're going to have all that natural motivation. And then as that estrogen peaks out right around ovulation, that's when your body's like, mate with me. I'm so beautiful. I'm magnetic. I'm radiant. I'm confident, like all of those types of energies. So you're going to be sending out that signal to the world that you are ready to make a baby. And that is so good for, photo shoots, or, asking for a raise at your job, or having happy hours, doing date nights, like anything that requires a lot of social outward energy. I tend to be a very big introvert. And so I need this phase in order to do a lot of those things.
I was just thinking that for myself. I love that you mentioned like get your photo shoot done, because I had some headshots done last year, and I've had a couple of photography like shoots for business stuff. And every time I feel so uncomfortable. I feel
Mm-hmm.
so awkward. I'm like, I don't know how to position my body. Can you just like position me for me? And like, of course,
Yeah.
they usually don't. They just kind of say, like, go to what feels comfortable for you. And I'm like, what feels comfortable for me does not look good in a photo. Like, this is not my area of
Yeah.
expertise, right? I just feel like I almost never know where my limbs are in space and things like that. And so I'm definitely making a mental note
Yes.
of
This is the
that
time you would want
for
to do that.
myself for the future.
Yes.
That's so great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you're going to just feel, you're going to maybe, I mean, it's one, just taking photos probably isn't comfortable anyway, right? Like for most people. But if you're going to do something that's kind of out of your box and out of comfortable, like let's stack it with as much confidence and comfortability as you possibly can. And doing it there would be so much better than doing it in your luteal phase or your menstrual phase when you're like, all I want to do is hang out in my pajamas and I don't feel really great. Like, come on.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like this is if you're going to record social media content, same thing. Like this is the time. I feel like I can get in. I always record my social media content in my car, like I'm waiting to pick up kids from school. I'm like, it works. And I get in the car and I'll record like 10 reels in a row in the 15 minutes that I'm waiting for my kids at school. Versus in the other phases, I'm stumbling over my words and it takes me the whole 15 minutes to record one. And then I'm not really happy with it and I never post it, right? Like, really capitalize on this one as your lots of beautiful energy going out from you, and people are going to be magnetized to that just naturally. And then
I love
after that
that.
estrogen dips, progesterone is going to kick in, and progesterone feels very different. Progesterone has a sense of like slowing down in some capacity, but it also can be very productive if, like that end of pregnancy when you're like nesting and getting all of your T's dotted or crossed and your I's dotted. Like that's the type of productivity that this phase comes with. It's a lot of back end admin type of work, a lot of organizational work. It's a lot of let's wrap everything back up so that I can take the rest again when my next period comes. But this phase comes with a lot of that emotional energy, a lot of the self-doubt, a lot of the fears, a lot of the triggers, a lot of all those things. And so it can get a really bad rap. A lot of women will tell me, they're like, my menstrual phase is not the problem. It's the luteal phase. The luteal phase is the phase when I'm like bitching at everybody, biting everybody's head off, like tearing everything apart and want to burn the whole thing down. Like I can't do
Yeah.
any of it.
I've heard
And
that from a lot of people as well.
yes, it's really heavy. And I think as an entrepreneur, one, and as just as a mom, and as somebody who's really into personal development, like this has become my favorite phase because this is where your growth happens. When you get
Mm-hmm.
triggered, when those like doubts come in or those limiting beliefs pop in, it's a really great time for you. Instead of trying, like we talked about at the beginning, instead of like squashing them down, we get really curious about them and ask yourself, like,
Yeah.
why did I yell at that person driving down the road today? What was that
Yeah.
all about? Like, where did that come from? And usually when we start asking that question of why, we discover something about ourselves. Like, oh, I'm either
Absolutely.
really overwhelmed or I don't feel like I've been appreciated or whatever is coming, right? And that insight is gold. It is so powerful, especially in business or in growth. I think motherhood, it's super powerful too. Almost every area of life, it's going to be incredibly powerful to have these insights. And most women are just like, let's run through it, let's push through it, and I'm going to try to
Yeah.
not trigger and yell and get angry. And then I'm just going to keep plugging along through my period phase, and we miss out on the magic of what those two phases do for us. Like they're so incredibly powerful. Like I said, they're gold for women that really want to grow and achieve at their best.
I agree. I feel like I'm always teaching my clients as well that it's in the midst of your triggers that your best healing happens. Like those are the
Mm-hmm.
invitations into the deeper layers of your healing, right? It's
Yeah.
not when everything is smooth sailing and everything feels good and you're feeling really beautiful and you're in your ovulation phase,
Yeah.
apparently, like that sort of thing. It's not when things are going really smooth that our healing happens. Our
Yeah.
healing happens when shit's hitting the fan, when our capacity is stretched, when we are not at our best, when the triggers feel like they're coming in one after
Mm-hmm.
another. Like that is often where those invitations for healing lie. So if
Totally.
we were to like sum that up, like really in simple terms for
Yeah.
people, correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but you're going
Yeah.
to have like the start of your phase is your menstrual cycle, you're actively bleeding. This is your rest. This is
Mm-hmm.
where I always think back to the times where women used to go to like bleed together into the
Mm-hmm.
earth. And,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of varying opinions around that, but I honestly feel like we should bring that back
I know.
because it's really hard to rest when you're still trying to run a household and a business and parent and all of these things. But if we could really embrace that ceremonial rest
Yeah.
that is designed to come with that time. So you're actively bleeding, that's your rest phase. Your period has stopped and now you're into,
Follicular.
but what's the purpose that comes with that
I
energetically?
Yeah, so I call it the accelerate phase because that's kind of what
Okay.
it feels like. It's like this acceleration. Like you've just like come off this rest, you've recharged, and now it's like let's hit the ground running. So it's a lot of big energy, a lot of production, a lot of creation, a lot of newness, like new big ideas. In business, there's a lot of like all the like putting together new presentations, that type of energy, like anything that's new, big, project based. It's also the time when I have the doctor's appointments and the vet visits and all those types of
Yeah.
things that I just need to make. Like they're like, I had to just sit down and make these phone calls and get this done. That's the phase I'll do it because it makes it really easy to check off all of those things.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're bleeding, you're in your rest phase. Your bleeding's
Mm-hmm.
over, you're in your like creation, you're going, you're doing, you're like boosted kind of
Yeah.
phase. Then you're in your ovulation phase, and that's where you are feeling really good, ready to put yourself out there. If you're going to try something new, that's when you're going to do it. And then
Mm-hmm.
after your ovulation is when you're coming back into that like preparing for rest. So you're wrapping
Yes.
up loose ends, you're gathering kind of your resources, you're
Mm-hmm.
allowing the emotions to flow, you're allowing those triggers to come so that you can invite yourself into that deeper healing, and then you're preparing for rest again.
Mm-hmm.
Does
Yep.
that kind of sum it
Exactly.
up?
Yeah. Beautiful.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, and when you look at all of the different phases, like they all meet a different part of us, like a core need for us. And it's something I like as time has gone on and I really have dug into it deeper. Like each of the different phases reflect like a season of the year as well, right? Like our winter is our rest phase.
Yeah.
Move into spring, which is like bringing new things forward, and then into summer where it's like full bloom, everything's amazing and wonderful, and then into fall, which we is this harvest and like preparing to go back into dormancy. And so when we start to look at that, it's like, oh, this is like Mother Nature's rhythm. This isn't just women and even men. Like men follow the same similar type of rhythm. Like they have these elements in their day too, right? If you have a male partner, chances are you've recognized like those moments when they come home and they sit on the toilet for an hour or they just want to sit on the couch and watch football or whatever it is, right? Like and as women, I know a lot of women that's like, it's frustrating when we feel like we've been working all day long doing all the things and they just want to sit on the couch and watch a game. I'm like, dude, but that is their rest. Like that's them hitting that rest point where they're like, I've been going all day. I just need a little moment to chill, Or
Yeah.
my husband will be like, I'm going to go play basketball in the middle of the day. It's like he wants to go be with social friends. Like he has this rhythm for him. It's like work, 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 work. I'm going to do this fun, eventful thing with my friends in the middle of the day. I'm going to come home and then I want to veg and I want to relax and I want to, and that's their rhythm too. So like we all have these rhythms. And when we lean into it, that's what allows us to not burn out. and we meet each of our core needs. Like we have the core need of connecting, that rest, right? There's a core need. There's a production core need. There's a core need for us to relate to others and have relationships and be in community. And then there's a core need for us to connect to ourselves. And I think when we have all four of those, we don't feel like as burnt out, as stressed and imbalanced as most women are feeling. It's not a balance of I'm holding everything at the same time. It's a rhythmical balance that allows us to meet all of those
Yeah.
needs.
I love this. In the last like 10 to 12 years, have really leaned into those like seasons, like the inner winter,
Mm-hmm.
the inner autumn, the inner spring, the inner summer. But I honor it more through a calendar year, right?
Yeah.
Through like the
Yeah.
ceremonies, the equinoxes, the solstices. And I lean into that in my way of being
Mm-hmm.
throughout those different seasons. But I'm looking forward to now kind of like shifting that and exploring that a little bit more through my cycle. I've been tracking my cycle for probably a decade or more. Um, and including my ovulation phase. So I'm not just tracking the period, right? I'm tracking the whole thing. I use an app that's really helpful. And I it's interesting because I've learned so much about myself through the tracking, but I haven't gone deeper so much into what you're sharing. Like I've gone probably past what the average person has, where I understand like the bleed as a rest phase, the ovulation as a production phase, as a putting yourself out there phase. I notice within my body what my like I don't need to check the app. I know what's
Yeah.
coming. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like I get more pain around ovulation in different parts of my body than I do when I'm coming up to my bleed phase and things like that. So I feel like in some ways I have really embraced this and it's really supported me in a lot of ways, but I'm also really looking forward to implementing this a little bit deeper, especially into like business practices
Mm-hmm.
and looking at it more as 1 month instead of like my spring, summer, autumn, winter
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
calendar year.
And that's beautiful that you already do that. I mean, that's so, like I integrate that into my mastermind where we're working in those seasonal elements too. Even if we were to expand out even further, there are rhythms we see even in years. Like we see it in politics a lot, where there's like this wave of how the politics runs, and like the stock market, like there's waves of how the stock market runs, right? We see these patterns, we see these rhythms. It exists in such a micro level and in a macro level as well. And like if we really looked at the day, we have these rhythms too, in like the circadian rhythm and how you show up in your sleep and how you show up in the day. Like most of us don't have the same level of energy all day long. We have up and down rhythms and patterns when we start to crave more, or we want that afternoon siesta, or it's all natural and it's all a part of the process. Like our world is just such a dynamic like ebb and flow instead of a constant on energizer bunny all the time. So whether we're looking at it at a very macro level of like year seasons, or if we're looking at it in the year itself, or if we're looking at it in the month or even in the day, like how do we really embody this element of rhythm in everything we do?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you. I'm just thinking,
Yeah.
I feel like I have to come back and listen to this episode by myself with my notepad
Yeah.
and like my own cycle tracker and really like get into it for myself. So you just mentioned seeing this play out in like a greater scale through years and politics and the stock market. And I know that you're really big into feminine wealth energetics. So
Mm.
I would love to hear a little bit more about how that kind of connects to all of this. But first, for someone who has no idea what feminine wealth energetics is, if they've never heard that term before, how would you explain that to them? What is feminine wealth energetics?
Well, I look at it as the inherent like worthiness that we are worthy of all of the wealth and abundance of everything that we want in our lives. And that when we even just look at the energy of masculine versus feminine are receivers, we are magnetizers, we are people who like it's about the current presence, like this present moment, rather than just about the future and just about the doing and the checking. And so a lot of what we talked about already, this like checking off the to-do list, being really productive, the doer, that is all very masculine. Whereas if you look at the qualities of the feminine, it's the being, it's the presence, it's the state orientedness, it's the the flow, it's all of these like more emotional, intuitive sorts of pieces. And so when I look at that and we see that, it's like women are inherently worthy to receive all of the wealth of not just money, but like wealth of their lives just inherently for who they are. And I think so many women are focused on the doing and the hustling and the trying to achieve to acquire that, rather than just embodying that they already have it and already are present to it right now. And so a big part of that for me has really been working with women in that place of, like I talked a little bit earlier about, like pleasure and enjoyment and beingness and state orientation, and like really getting into this place of like, how juicy and rich can we make your life feel for you right now? Because when you're in that state, you attract literally
Yes.
everything that you want.
I feel like my whole body is just like, it just wants to like flow and like move with this whole
Yeah.
conversation, because to me that's what that is, right? This whole
Mm-hmm.
conversation feels like permission to
Yes.
step like more fully into your most feminine way of being, which has been so repressed throughout society. But there is so much power and potency within being able to fully step into that energy and that like embodied way of being
Yeah.
with permission, with feeling like allowed and worthy within that, right? Like not like, oh, I'm stepping into my feminine and I'm playing the feminine role and that means I'm less than, right? This is like, I'm stepping into my feminine, I'm embodying that way of being, and I know the inherent worth that comes with that
Yeah. Yeah.
and
It's
all that it offers to society and to my family and to my household and my children and my partner and myself.
there's
Mm.
so much like, and I love talking about it on like a very spiritual level too, but we look at it like at a very like physiological, biological level. Like women
Yeah.
receive, right? We receive from a man, and when we receive from a man, we create life. And as I know you said that you've had your baby, like all we do to create a baby is just be, right? We're not in there like, how do we make the fingers and the toes today? How do we make sure that the heart is pumping where it's supposed to go? Like,
Yeah.
we don't have to do anything that. Like, all we do as women to carry a baby is make sure that we're nourishing ourselves, make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, because what we do for ourselves helps create that life itself. And all we have to do in that whole process is just be and nourish and take care of ourselves. And so when we look at that of like actually creating life itself, all a woman has to do is receive, right? I mean, like taking out all the conversation of like IVF and all of that, like that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But I want to acknowledge that because I know it's not easy for a lot of women. But I also think that if we look historically, I think it's years and years and years of really misalignment in the way that we're living and like really asking so much of women that they don't need to be doing. But that's a whole other conversation. I just want to acknowledge that before we go any further. But like
Yeah. Thank you.
inherently, women are designed to receive and to then carry a baby. And all they have to do is just be in that presence and like create life out of that, right? Like that's how we were designed. And I think it's a beautiful thing when we start to really embody that of like, hey, how juicy and good can I feel? Because when I feel so good and feel so juicy and I feel so pleasured in so many different facets and ways, then I can create the impact that I really want to create. And I can bring so much forth in the world. Like a mom, if we were just to take this to motherhood, a mom that feels amazing, that feels so soul lit up from the inside out is going to be the best mom for her kids.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
But when she's depleted and
I
exhausted and
know.
wiped out and just self-sacrificing so much, like I actually had this conversation, like I almost posted this reel the other day because I got to school pickup and all the moms are talking about like they wanted to get together and do this play date for the kids, and inside I was like, I have zero desire to go create this like play date on a Saturday afternoon. Like I'm always doing something for the kids. Like I'm practices, or I'm, driving them back and forth to school. Like if I have a free day, I don't like, the last thing I want to do is squeeze in
Yeah.
another like enjoyment activity for my children. Like I would rather not. And I had this moment of sitting there thinking like, oh, is there something wrong with me that I'm not putting the happiness and the pleasure of my children ahead of myself? Like I'm not giving them that Saturday afternoon to go have fun and whatnot because I don't want to do that. But then had this recognition in my mind of like, well, if I'm making sure that I'm doing something that's going to also fuel me, then I'm going to show up better for them the whole rest of the week. And I think that's a very big missing piece in the conversation for women today, is really just looking at, and like, you could take this to kids, you could take this to your business, you could take this to your work, whatever. But if you feel alive and you feel good and you feel so rich, you are going to impact every person you come in contact with. The coffee shop, your kids, your like employers, like it doesn't matter. Every person around you is going to feel that. But it starts with you making sure that you're taking care of yourself.
Absolutely. And, I think that piece can actually go much further. I know that our dialogue today is like based around women, but I think that there's a really important component there for men as well.
100%.
That if men are alive and connected to themselves and nourished within themselves, and they feel allowed to be who they are, then they too are able to bring that into their household and bring that into their parenting and their children. And it brings me actually right into my next question, was going to be, talk to me about safety, because you said that, that's a big missing piece, that women cannot create and like be their full feminine energetic self when there is a lack of safety. And I think that somatics is going to come into play with this a lot, because by the time this episode comes out, I should hopefully be certified with my somatic inquiry piece. So I'm like deep into that like world at the time of this recording. So I think that a lot of that sense of safety, correct me if I'm wrong, is going to come from within ourselves, from within like doing that somatic work, or however it is that you create that felt sense of safety within your physiological, your cells, your muscles, your fascia. And I think it comes from outside as well, because we are in these dynamics and in a society where it inherently feels unsafe to be a woman a lot of the time. And a lot of us are in, family dynamics and households even where it feels unsafe to be the woman in that dynamic. And so, talk to me about that.
Yes. So going back to like a biological perspective, what happens if woman has high levels of stress? So we talked about the fight or flight response at the beginning. If women are operating in more of that fight or flight response and cortisol is high, what that does is signals to the body, hey, we got to prepare to fight or flee or run or whatever we're going to do. And when that system of our body, the sympathetic nervous system, is activated, it shuts down the fertility side. So just to kind of go back to that conversation about like fertility issues and things like that, I think there's a big portion of this is like a lot of women's bodies do not feel safe. And if we cut it at the root of that, we may see a shift in trend in some of the fertility issues that are marked, and that's one piece of that conversation. It's not the entire piece, but there's so many women that are having irregular periods, endometriosis, painful periods, like whole host of problems in that womb space. And I think a lot of it does come from that place of we've got overactive cortisol, bodies are in a lot of fight or flight most of the time. And it's telling that fertility system, hey, we're not safe. Like, let's not do this. Like, let's not have a baby and come in and not have a baby in this world. Right. So that's like one component to this conversation, and safety from like a very biological perspective. Like, a woman's body needs safety in order to let that fertility system do its job and run in the way it's supposed to. But again, also on that energetic component, I was at a retreat, and the woman hosting the retreat was beautiful and amazing, like this healer, and she was hosting this experience. And yet she had her husband there as a space holder, and he was there in the room, but he wasn't actively facilitating any part of the retreat. He was the safety, he was the protection around the entire event. And I watched this dynamic. There was this like moment where I was just watching the two of them interplay and thought, wow, this is what safety in our feminine really looks like.
Yes.
That a man doesn't feel like he has to be the provider, he has to be the doer, he has to control and subservient the woman in order to be that provider. But that when he feels so good in his masculine, and he can be the protector,
Yes.
and provide this safe space for the woman to do the magic, like the woman to be the healer, the woman to bring her creation, right? Like, even just thinking on biological level, like a woman's body creates life. When we look at the woman creating life in that feminine, and then the masculine having to provide the structure and the protection around that, that I think is where it exists. And we could look at that even just like in my business, right? Like, I have the masculine structure, the systems that allow me to then be in my feminine, to have the flow and the creation, right? It's that they duality. It's not necessarily just men, women. It's like those elements have to coexist together. The coexistence of, there's some element of structure and protection that allows for the safety of the flow to happen in the inside. And I think that's the bigger conversation. It's really looking at, like, if we look at a society in whole, I think right now that masculinity feels threatened because they're only seeing it from this place of, I have to be the provider, I have to be the doer, I need to be like the everything. But that's really not what that masculine was designed to do. The masculine wasn't designed to be the everything. Yeah.
That is part of like such a bigger conversation that I can't wait to have, you know, that I feel like I'm often having, I guess, is that the damage that has been done to the feminine through this patriarchal system, that damage has been done just as much to the man. And when like the awakened man, the awakened masculine who's like truly embodied in their own safety, in their own sense of like good enoughness and worth and empowerment, that offers this like incredible healing ripple effect throughout everything else around. Because just like you said, like that, your experience at that retreat with the man there as the space holder, that is like the best metaphor for how I think we were designed to be, right? The man is that protective mechanism, that safety, that container, that space holder, right? They are the one who is creating that safety for everything else to happen within it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And men can't do that anymore at this point.
Yeah.
Like where we're at in society right now, like men can't do that. They are so traumatized, and they are so hurt repressed and anger repressed, and they don't feel safe to be themselves, and they don't feel safe to express. And so like the more traumatized and repressed and all of that they are, that leaks into us as well, and then also impacts the damage and the trauma that have been done to women as well, because then that brings in a significant layer of lack of safety for women. I want to comment to your talking about endometriosis and like all of these challenges that are coming up around like women's reproductive systems. And it's really interesting to me because when I was 15, I was diagnosed with endometriosis. I was told to like, you might not ever be able to have children. You're going to be on birth control for the rest of your, hormones for the
Yeah.
rest of your life to try to treat this. I've had like the laparoscopy when I was 19, and um, I was on like various types of hormones and birth control for probably, I don't know, over 10 years. Um, Over 10 years, less than 15 years, I guess. And I finally went off of them in my late 20s. I was treating for Lyme disease and co-infections at the time. I was really, really sick, and something just like wasn't feeling aligned for me anymore. There was this mismatch between me treating my natural body's like reproductive system with these hormones. I was stopping periods completely, right?
Hmm.
For like 10 years almost, you know what I mean? For a very,
Yeah.
very long time, right? And I was like, I don't even know where my system is anymore. I don't even know where I am within this system anymore. And something just felt like there was a really big misalignment for me. And so I went off of all of the hormones, and I was in the middle of my Lyme treatment. It probably wasn't the best time to go off of everything like that, but I did. And my periods went to the point where like you could set a clock by them. No pain, no issues. Like, and by that time in my life, I had really embraced more of this cyclical living. I had read more books around like female empowerment and the womb and the bleed and the cycles and the ceremonies within that, and had really like reconnected to that part of myself in a different way. And it was like my body stopped fighting me on it.
And I think that's a big piece. It's like a lot of women are just fighting their body's natural rhythm, right? We're trying to fit into this patriarchal 24-hour sort of schedule and calendar a lot. And I think that's one element of it. And I also think like there's a whole other conversation we can have around just like our food and our nutrition and the pesticides and all
Yeah.
these things. And then there's another conversation around the lack of awareness of medical, like women's health. Like we just, like you said, like the solution for almost any women's health problem is let's give you some birth control.
Yep.
That's it. That
Or an
is your
antidepressant
solution, or an antidepressant. Yes,
or an
like
anti-anxiety.
those are your options. And when we really look at it, like I forget the actual dates, like off the top of my head, but I think that birth control was introduced in like 1950s. I think the 1950s, and wasn't like that was before we were including women in medical studies. So it's like we put
Yeah.
this thing out there for women saying like, hey, this is going to solve all of your problems. And yet we've not actually researched it. And so it's kind of this like we've got so many, there's so many layers to the women's health discussion. But I
I
do
know.
find that a lot of women, especially those women that aren't having extreme symptoms, they're not maybe necessarily having endometriosis or like things like that, that once they start leaning into their cycle and start living in the cyclical pattern, there are a lot of symptoms that go away. Like I have seen clients heal from PMDD and from other symptoms and diagnoses, right? Just simply by living in more alignment and becoming really aware of like what their body needs rather than just looking at it from that medical symptom management perspective. And I think that's a big missing piece in a lot of the women's health conversation.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's so interesting. I've reflected back on this a number of times, but to be 15 years old and have like a medical professional say to you, "Oh yeah, you might never be able to have kids." And every time I would ask them like, "Oh, can we have a conversation about that? Like how can I gauge if I can have kids or not? What are my percentages? What are my rate? Like what do I need to do to be with this, right? Or prepare for this?" And they would just say, "Oh, we'll talk about it when the time comes. We'll talk about it when the time comes." So you're going to wait until I reach whatever stage of my life where I feel like I might be ready to have a kid, which like for me, I think I wasn't even fully ready to have my kid when I had my kid. Do you know what I mean? So had I waited until I
Yeah.
was really like in this place mentally, emotionally, physically, where I was like, oh, I'm ready to have a kid and I want to, like, I think it would have been really late in life.
Yeah.
And so it's just so bizarre to me that that was their answer. Like, oh,
Yeah.
we'll just wait until you're ready and then we'll have that conversation. And I realized that at like 15 years old, like, no, I wasn't ready or looking to have a child. But how does anyone sit with this information with like kind of this big question mark, this big black hole? And then what was interesting was they put this idea in my head that it might be really hard for me to have a baby.
Yeah.
And then when I went off birth control and I went off, you know, and I was tracking my cycle differently and I was reconnecting to myself in that way, that was, you know, quite a few years before I actually got pregnant. But I was never like trying to get pregnant in that time. Do you know what I mean? And when I did get pregnant, it was the first opportunity to that I would have had to get pregnant, that I got pregnant. And I knew that day that I was pregnant, right? Like
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
wild, bizarre things that like would never be explained through a medical lens.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there's so much, and I joke about it. Like if I weren't working with entrepreneurs, I would be working with teenage girls, because I think that there's so much power in girls understanding this about their bodies and about their cycles, and also like we even talked about like the triggers, right? And the thoughts and the beliefs and things that come up at that point in time in our luteal phase. Imagine if the next generation of girls didn't grow up with as much self-doubt and belief
Yeah,
about themselves, because they knew that in that luteal phase, when those thoughts came up, they're like, oh, this is just my luteal phase. It's not who I am.
exactly.
It's just what I'm feeling right now. So I can feel it right
Yeah.
now, but not know I know it's not who I am. And I think that identity piece that's happening in that teenage phase, when they're forming their identity of who they are for most of their lives, right? Like most of us probably, we look back at like if we were to sit down and actually look at like the things we believe about ourselves, chances are most of it formed in those teenage to preteen phase time of our lives. And so to go back to that and help those women or girls say, hey, what you're feeling right now is just part of your hormones. And so feel them, but no, it's not who you are. And these are the things and how we identify like who you are, and help them get really solid in that. I think it would change the next generation 100%. And there's days where I'm like, why am I working with entrepreneurs? Like that's who I need to be working with, but that's a whole other ballgame.
Well,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to be said for that. I think that what you're speaking
Yeah.
to is how to raise a more empowered generation, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
not only empowered by, oh, when I have these thoughts, it's actually my luteal phase and it's not who I am and it's okay to feel them and think them, but it doesn't have to become me. But not only that, but to remove like the shame around your cycle,
100%. Yes.
right? And to
Yes.
create that sense of empowerment within that more cyclical way of being. I think
Mm-hmm.
there's so much to be said for
Mm-hmm.
that.
And the
Um,
conversations with not just the girls, but with the boys too. Like,
yeah.
I have a teenager and I've watched just like her conversation, and to see, when she was in eighth grade and middle school and stuff, like they were talking about their periods and stuff. Like the boys knew when the girls were on their periods and things like that. And even for me today, I'm like, I'm just so shocked. And like, that feels so weird to me, because that's not how I grew up. So it's like a beautiful thing and I'm sure it's not happening like that at every school and in every situation, but I think that's what needs to happen. Like it needs to be this conversation where the men and the boys are supportive of women as they move through that, and not seeing it as a shameful thing, not seeing it as something that's embarrassing, not seeing it as something that makes them less than or that they can't function at the same level. It's just their bodies are different, and how can we create that masculine safety around that, even from
Yes,
a very young age?
absolutely.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, like I wouldn't have ever even asked my dad to pick up period products for me.
Yeah, probably
Do you know what
same.
I mean? Like
Yeah.
just like the masculine, and like it would have always been like straight to my mom, like I need whatever it is that I need, because I don't think there's a chance I ever would have
Mm,
like approached that within that like masculine energy. Whereas like
yeah.
now as an adult and doing like the work that I have, it's a very different situation. And I have actually made a point of, so my stepson is early teens, and our daughter's just a preschooler, but I have made a point of having my partner pick up menstrual products for me with his son present, right?
Hmm.
So that they can have that conversation. Oh yeah, this is something that, you know, Denise needs and we're picking it up for her, and here's why.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
that it's not, so that he can be learning through that. I'm sure he learns from his mom too, right? But so that he can be learning just through that modeled behavior, that it's okay for this man, this masculine dad figure, to go to the store and to go to the period aisle and to like pick up these products for his partner and to
Yeah.
totally normalize that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I would love, because I know that a lot of my audience is living with complex chronic diseases.
Hmm.
And I know that you are passionate about women living in states of chronic overwhelm and burnout and the rising rates of chronic illness. So, how would you recommend that women can use some of these strategies to their advantage to either support them in like coming out of burnout if they're already there? Because I think most of us are already there,
Yeah.
but also preventative.
Yeah. I think one, it's just like going back to that idea of like learning how to listen to your body. Most of us don't really know. Like I kind of see pain and like things like that as the red, like your body has literally sent up the signal of like SOS, like we're going down, like we're done, right? And the subtleties of listening to our bodies before we reach to that place are much harder to hear, and it's much harder to see and be aware of. And I think that's the skill that most women need to start developing. And even if it's subtle and listen little, and that's where I think the cycle kind of is the starting point for that, because it's a little bit more obvious, right? Like
Yeah.
our period is a little bit more of a, not a red flag, but it's kind of a little bit more obvious of like what's actually happening. And so it's a really great place to kind of start in that place of understanding like, how is my body signaling to me and what is it telling me? Because when we get to that place where we can pick up on those like subtle nuances, right? Like you said that you could sense ovulation. A lot of women can't, right? Like a lot of women can't even feel ovulation or to feel, what's going on, and to ask those questions of why am I feeling really tense in one side of my body? Or why am I like, even the other day I was driving and I was like, ooh, my jaw is really clenched. Like, why am I holding my jaw in such a clenched position? And it's those subtle things, right? Like when we start to look at, why am I holding my jaw clenched? Or why am I like hiking my shoulder so funny? Or why am I doing all these things? Like when we start really getting into the subtleties and the nuances of like the smallest little things. So I work in the NICU. So I work with NICU babies, and it's, to be able to put my hands on them and to feel the tension or to feel shifts or to feel things in such a small, minute body or small little thing. It's like, how can we do that, but in our bodies as adults? Like, how do we get into this place where we're so in tune with like these like small little shifts of heat in certain areas or tension in certain areas? Like when I lead breath work, one of my favorite words is like stickiness, right? Because stickiness implies like it's not bad or good or whatever. Like it's just, there's a little bit of friction. There's a little bit of
Yeah.
something there for us to like stick with and to pause with. And so even just like a body scan sometimes can change so much because I'll be sitting there and like scan through. I'm like, whoa, like my heart is like pounding out of my chest. Like, did I drink too much coffee this morning or do I need to adjust? Like, it's those subtle little symptoms and those subtle little cues that I think our bodies are sending to us all of the time. Most of us are not listening to them, myself included. Most of us are not listening to them until they send us major issues, like major problems. Like I went through a whole series of thinking I had lupus for a while because I was having these big old weeping wound melt outbreaks on my face and like all this stuff. And it went on for a year, searching every medical doctor, talking to every person, like meeting with rheumatology, like all of the things. And at the end of it, it was like my body was having a toxic overload of chemicals and pesticides and different things. Like fragrances was my big one. Like I had to eliminate every fragrance from my
I have had to do the same.
Yeah, but it's that I think it's like my body probably was sending me little subtle cues and signals for a very long time. I just wasn't listening to them, and it wasn't until it got to this place where I was like incapacitated that I actually stopped to listen. So I think ultimately that's where we're all going to always be learning this skill. It's not like I said, like I'm still learning this skill. I'm not a master at it. I think but that is one of these things like for all of us, like especially if you're already in that place of experiencing chronic pain or chronic illness, it's like your body is there to help us learn something, and we may never fully overcome something. We may never eliminate everything, every symptom, but how can we start using those symptoms as cues, as indicators of either overdoing it or underdoing it, or like the luteal phase? Like I know we talked a lot about those emotions that come up in that phase. Most of my clients who get really good with syncing with their cycle, that luteal phase is not intense. We like skate through it. Like the last one I had, I was like, shoot, did I just go through luteal phase?
I know.
Like, how did that happen? Like there was no triggers. There was no emotion. There was no like crazy wildness. Like I went through it pretty smoothly. And that's what happens. I think the more that we start to understand and honor and trust our bodies, give it what it needs, those extremes become less and less and less. So if you're in that state of feeling like, flares or stuff keeps happening, it's like, how can you use it as a signal that something's off? And like, how can you start listening and just leaning in, maybe even just a micro shift? Like it may not be a massive overhaul or things all of a sudden everything's better and now you're pain free and you're walking around the world like you're gold. Like it may not be that. It may just be these subtle little tiny shifts of what does my body need and how can I really support it, and permissioning yourself to do it in that way.
Absolutely. And those tiny, what feel like minuscule shifts, like they add up, right? They add up to create really significant change. One thing that I've noticed is that by the time somebody has reached the big crash, like the big, okay, so one of my teachers puts it like this: there's the feather, the brick, and the bus. Okay.
Yeah.
Ryan Rose Root Cause. I don't know if you know him, but that's how he puts it. So when you're starting to listen to your body or your intuitive cues, there's the feather. That's going to be that like really little tickle. It's really subtle, and most people miss it. Right. And then there's going to, once you're really like attuned to that, the goal is to get it at the feather, not the brick or the bus, right?
Yeah.
To get to that point. You miss the feather, then comes the brick, and that's like a brick through the window. So that's like something that's like bigger, you can't miss it. But a lot of people still sort of like set it aside. Like, okay, well, I'll deal with that later. Or it's like not intrusive enough for me to deal with that right now. And then all of their bricks kind of start to pile up. And then now you get the bus, and the bus is like the big injury, the cancer, the loss, the big health crash, things like that. And so, you're sharing what I think a lot of people go through is where they don't listen to their body until they get hit by the bus. Right. So for you, it was, maybe feeling like you might have lupus and going through all of those problems. For someone like myself, it was Lyme disease, and then it was, myalgic encephalomyelitis and mast cell activation syndrome and POTS, and like that whole cluster of, incurable, I put that in quotations because I don't really believe it, but incurable complex chronic diseases, right? And that's what a lot of my patients or like my clients are living with as well. And I find that when you get to that point, some of, now your autonomic nervous system is misfiring, right? So
Mm-hmm.
some of those body cues are no longer quite as accurate as they once were, right? So now, like, the heart racing is not necessarily, I drank too much coffee or I'm feeling nervous about something. And now the heart racing is like my autonomic nervous system senses me getting up from a sitting position as
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
threat, and like it feels like it's going to faint. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's where I find that somatic piece comes in really nicely, and that there's like such a huge importance in creating that safety in our body again, right? And developing that felt sense of safety throughout these symptoms, not so that we can ignore them because we like, oh, now we feel safe when our heart's pounding and so we just ignore it. Like,
Yeah.
not for that, but so that our autonomic nervous system can begin to shift and start to send us more accurate cues again. And then from there, I think we can use those exactly like you're saying, right? To start to like monitor our body.
Mm-hmm.
But when everything's misfiring and we feel so unsafe all the time within our bodies,
Yeah.
that's, there's some steps to that.
Yeah. I think to like wrap that back up with like what we talked about in the beginning too is this sense of rest. Like it's the
Yeah.
stillness. It's the I mean, for me, if I'm going and doing and just living life, I miss those cues until it
Yeah,
gets too far, right? Like you said, like the
exactly.
feather. It's the stillness, it's the slowness, it's the rest, it's the recharging, it's those moments of like really tuning in. And even like you said, like the somatics of like being present with what's actually happening and allowing our body to
Mm.
recalibrate. That doesn't happen when we're on the go. Like
No.
the somatic stuff happens when you're still, when you're silent, when you're quiet, when you're with yourself. And I think that's the missing component. Like if I, especially as like an OT and working in, I used to work in the area of sensory processing and autism and all those types of things. And now like ADHD in women and in adults is being like way widely like diagnosed today. A lot, like I see a lot of it. It's like, gosh, so much of it is just the overstimulation of our society right now. We have like our phones at us with us, like dinging every moment of the day. We've got our watches that are dinging at us every single moment of the day. We've got the news, we've got the Spotify's, we've got the, like literally there's so much stimulation that go back to the nervous system. Our nervous systems were not designed to operate with that
No.
much stimulation. And so
No.
now we have not just nervous systems that are getting overload of everything coming at us, but we have now these nervous systems that are like handling all that stim that's coming. Now we're having to keep producing, we keep going, and we're never actually getting it to a place where that nervous system gets to like bring itself back in. So if we look at it from a very nervous system perspective, like our world, our society, like we need more of that stillness. We need
I
more
know.
of that like slow practice to like really tune inward.
I am very easily overstimulated.
Mm-hmm.
Very easily overstimulated by like noise and touch, and like sound is like I think the biggest one for me, but also by like movement too, like being in the
Mm-hmm.
car. And so, I'm just going to share, this was a really interesting thing that came up last week for me, because you're mentioning like this somatic work, like it happens in stillness. I Sometimes you have to make it happen for you not in stillness. Like
Yeah.
sometimes you have to make it happen for you like as it's happening in real life. So we were in the car last week heading to my child's doctor's appointment, and I wasn't driving. Being in a car has become a really challenging piece for my body, somatically, like symptom wise, however you want to look at that, through my nervous
Mm-hmm.
system. My autonomic nervous system, being in a car has become really, really challenging. And especially when my child is also in the car, because my child's needs within the car and my needs within the car, they do not mesh. She has a lot of questions. She needs to talk like nonstop, incessantly. She needs you to respond in a very specific way with very specific language. Often we don't know what that language is. There's this big mismatch. And for 3-4 years of her life, she just screamed incessantly every time we were in the car nonstop. So there's a lot of layers to this that has
Yeah.
created a lot of like unsafety in my body around being in a car, especially if she's there too. So we're in a car. I also have mast cell activation syndrome. I've had some pretty severe allergic reactions in a car where I felt like, would I make it to a hospital? Would I make it, like, I'm stuck on the highway, like there's nowhere to go, and you're in this allergic reaction and your throat's
Yeah.
getting tight and your mouth is swelling and all of these pieces, right? So now my body, like, automatically, I can feel it as soon as I get in the car that I feel unsafe, right? And what happens when you feel unsafe with mast cell activation syndrome? Well, an allergy reaction starts, because mast cells are significantly related to your amygdala. Your amygdala is significantly related to your mast cells. Like, one triggers the other triggers the other. It's just, they can't be separated,
Yeah.
right? So then you bring in all these extra layers. So we're in the car. And I'm like, man, I am not okay. I'm not okay right now. And I'm in the car and my daughter's in the back seat and my partner's driving. And I have to get to this specialist appointment for her that's like 25-30 minutes away. And I have to also make it through this specialist appointment once I'm there. And then I have to make it home as well. Right. So that's what's going through my head, is like, I'm in survival. I have to get there. I have to get through this appointment. I have to be able to communicate to her specialist during this appointment, and I have to get home. And I can't do that if I'm like, if my mouth is swelling and my throat is swelling and I'm panicking and I'm in complete like nervous system dysregulation and fight flight and whatever, right? And this is my opportunity for healing. Right? Right there in that trigger, in that moment, is my opportunity to shift this outcome for myself and to shift the progression of how this goes. So I'm in the car and I'm sitting there and I'm going like, okay, I'm resourcing, I'm finding my resource, right? My happy place, that my felt sense of like safety in my body. And then I'm going into the sensations in my body from, I'm resourced. Now I'm going into the discomfort. I'm allowing the discomfort. I'm exploring it somatically. And then I'm coming back into my resource. And then I'm looking around and I'm going, oh, I'm finding joy in the colors in the sky. And I'm finding these different things that are bringing me felt senses of safety, because that's what allows you, obviously, through, somatics. So to pendulate through your
Yeah.
discomfort and your resourced safety. And then in this, my daughter starts her talking to me, right? Like her asking the questions and talking to me. And she noticed that I had shifted in my chair. So now she's asking me, how come your head's sitting higher in your chair than it was a minute ago, right? You can't get away with anything without her asking about it. And what I did was I started saying to her, yeah, I just shifted my body because mom has a really hard time in the car sometimes. And she's like, you do? And I said, yeah. And so, what I'm doing is I'm noticing. And I started vocalizing everything that I was doing. So now I was modeling this behavior to her, for her to hopefully at some point, she's only 4, so not right now, but like at some point be able to do for herself. And it allowed me to stay in that process
Yeah.
for myself in the
Yeah.
middle of life, while life was happening, while the triggers were happening. I was able to stay in that process. So now I'm voicing to her out loud, oh, I'm just feeling my bum in the seat and I'm feeling my back on the chair, and I'm looking around and I'm noticing that I really like the colors in the sky and the sun is rising. It was really early in the morning. I love the purples and pinks in the sunrise, And then I'm going into my body and I'm noticing that I'm feeling really tense in my chest and I'm feeling like my throat is really tight and I'm feeling like my tongue is too big for my mouth and I'm feeling, I'm
Yeah.
continuing to go through that. And then I'm noticing that I really like the green and the lights and I really like, and so I kept pendulating myself back and forth, but out loud.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting because it really like met some of her needs to still be like having me talk to her and to be talking to me. It met my needs in a different way. Like it allowed me to stay within this process without going, I need you to be quiet right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Which is what I would sometimes do is like, oh my gosh, I'm not okay. And my throat's tight and my tongue feels too big for my mouth and I'm so not okay. And I just need you to stop talking.
Yeah.
Right. And of course, like anyone listening with 4-year-olds knows that when you're
Yeah.
like, hey, I need you to stop talking right now because I'm super not okay, like they don't register any of that.
No, they talk more.
Right? They talk more. Like,
Yeah.
what do you mean you're not okay? And blah, blah, blah. But my needs are this. And all of a sudden, you're into this whole other thing. So I do think that there's a lot to be learned and to be discussed around how to weave these practices into our actual life. Because the fact is, our society is living in fast forward. It's living in a way that is so out of alignment with any of this work for ourselves, with us being able to connect to ourselves and to stay with ourselves when things get uncomfortable,
Yeah.
right? And to be with that without self-abandoning is not something that our society really has a whole lot of space for. So I think, we can't change that overnight.
Yeah.
But if we can find ways to weave these practices into the life that we are actually in right now, that's where massive change is created.
Yeah. No, I agree. I actually had this like idea at one point. It was like, I wanted to create a program called Meditate Like a Mother. Cause I'm like, what mother has time to actually like sit and do
Yes.
nothing? Like just meditate. But like, how do we bring that practice into everything that we're doing? I think sometimes it does take, like you said, even that pendulation, it takes the pendulation of like, how do I actually do that in a stillness perspective so that then I have the resource and the skills and then I can do that
Oh,
outside in
for
other
sure.
ways too.
Yeah.
Because like you said, like what you were able to do is like to tune in to her needs and to tune into your needs at the same time. It's like a highly complex skill as well. It's like there's this complexity that we're adding to it in this dynamic sort of situation that I think it takes practice. It takes like, it just goes to show like you have a very great awareness of like where your body's at and what's actually happening. That I think is a skill sometimes we're even still learning outside, like and we're gonna probably have better days with it. There's probably been days where you're like, just stop talking, like I can't
Oh
handle
yeah.
this right now,
Oh
right?
yeah, for
And
sure.
so there's gonna be even that, like there's gonna be this like pendulation of there's days where, oh, I actually have the awareness of like what's actually happening right now, and I can hold this space of like meeting her needs and meeting my needs at the same time. And chances are it's probably cycle based. And then there's going to be those other days when you're just going to be like, I can't handle this right now. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to lose it. And like, I need that, like you said, that quiet. And I remember that even too, like with my kids, like I remember them, like some days when they come out and like in the morning, I'm really great about in the morning, like trying to start my day, having some time just to journal and like tune in with myself. And if they come out and interrupt me, like you said, there's those days where I'm like, I need this. I need this. Like, please leave me alone because I need this. And then there's those other days where I'm like, I can let them sit on my lap and they can be
Totally.
present with me and I can be in my space and like my practice and still enveloping them in and like meeting their needs too. And so I think it's just honoring that too. It's like we're going to have that pendulation of where we're at and how well resourced we are. And like I said, probably where our cycle's at and just like what are those needs that we have. And it is, as you said, like, I mean, ideally, we're doing that dynamic dance all the time. Like no matter where
Yep.
we're at, we're like in every other moment, we're having that moment of like, this is where I'm at. But the reality is if we're like that all the time, chances are we're going to be way overstimulated too, because our bodies can't, probably our nervous systems can't handle the load that we're carrying and the full weight of every sensation at the same time. Like our brains are really protective, and it shuts off things that it doesn't think are important, trying to help us preserve the energy for what we need to focus on. And so if we're like totally present to like every sensation that we're experiencing, and we're trying to like speak on stage, like it's just not going to happen, right? So our
No.
bodies have to pendulate between those sorts of spaces too. So
Absolutely. I'm gonna have to go back and like look at my cycle tracker now and like look
yeah.
at that day in the car, because I also had a day like somewhere close to that one not long ago, and it stands out in my mind because it doesn't happen very often, but where I was just like, stop, just stop, like I,
Yeah.
and then I'm sobbing, and
Yeah.
it was just layer after layer of like overstimulation, being interrupted too many times during too many things, and then her like picking up a knife on the counter. And like
Mm-hmm.
that just like put me, and she wasn't even, it wasn't safe for her to have the knife, but she wasn't doing anything that was like unsafe with it. She just shouldn't have it, and it scared me. And I was just way outside of my window of tolerance,
Yeah.
way outside of it. And my partner hears me just like from the other room, like just start yelling, like, stop, just stop. And then, he comes in and he, takes her and like walks her out of the room and gives me some space and whatever. And he comes back and I was like, I just need a hug. And I just started like ugly crying, right? Like right there with her. And again, just using this as an opportunity for modeling, like, I'm so sorry that I yelled at you. I should not have yelled at you. I am having a really hard day and I'm really overstimulated. There is too much coming into my brain at once right now, and I still shouldn't have yelled at you.
Yeah.
Right. And, when she asks about my crying or whatever, yeah, mommy just really needed to release through tears. Yeah. And that's okay. And that's
Yeah.
safe, you know?
Yeah.
And we used that again in like another like therapy appointment for her later, like an example of, oh, well, we were trying to teach her around like windows of tolerance, obviously in more basic language, but
Yeah.
like fight, flight, and windows of tolerance and things like that. And I said, you remember that day when mommy got really loud and, mommy was in fight and she was way outside her window of tolerance and she could not take one more thing. She was way beyond that. And so mommy got really loud. And then when mommy got really loud, like, how did you feel? You probably felt really scared. And then what happened? And then mommy had to release through crying and crying like really loud and a lot and being held by daddy, like, and so just
Mm-hmm.
really being able to bring that in as like, you're a whole person. You're allowed to be a whole person. And sometimes we are going to be outside of that window of tolerance. And sometimes we are going to react in ways that are not ideal. And sometimes we are going to have to apologize. And it's okay to feel that way. It's not okay to yell, and it's okay to
Yeah.
feel that way. It's not okay to hit, like things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah, but I really hope that through some of these practices, and I see a lot more parents embracing these practices for themselves and in front of their children, I really hope that we start to raise a generation that is raised in a more empowered way and that does feel like they have permission to be their whole selves and to desire what they desire and to feel what they feel and to really connect with their bodies in that way and not just let society completely like cut them off from self.
Yeah. And again, I think the modeling piece of it is that's how we're going to do it. It's,
Yeah.
we need to learn those skills that we need to impart onto the next generation. And like we said, like there's so much stim coming at us today. Like our world is so fast. We're going like, if we were to go back to like my grandparents' generations of like when they were growing up as kids, they're like playing and riding their bikes to the park and then spending all day at the park, or like they were not on technology. They didn't have instant access. Like my kids, they want something, they're instantly on Google trying to
I
get
know.
it or order it or whatever. Like this, like
I know.
our world is just so fast. The school or the tools and the skills that we need for this next generation are tools and skills that we've never had to use and employ as much as before. So they're new, and it's, I think, our responsibility to really start learning what they are to help share that with the next generation. And I love that, like my kids' school incorporates a lot of social emotional regulation stuff into their schools. And I think it needs to become essential in every school. I actually just saw a reel that it looked like it was a school probably in India, like it looked like an Indian school. And the teacher was drawing something on the board, and all the kids were blindfolded, and they were intuitively drawing what she was drawing up on the board. And it was talking about like teaching intuition in schools. And I was like, yes, like this is what we need. We need to be teaching our kids how to actually have that intuition and that like inner self-awareness, because right now there's so much information and so much stim coming at them from the world that those are skills and tools that we need to be teaching, that maybe before we didn't really have to teach. They were inherent. They were just a part of life and a part of our, we go for walks and ride our bikes out in the fields every day. We would get that meditative, quiet, still space, which we're not doing now. So
Yeah.
it's like, how do we intentionally make that happen? And what are those skills that we need to acquire? Yeah.
Oh, I so
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
Renae, thank you for this conversation.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's been really powerful and informative, but what I have loved most about it is just that sense of permission.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's something that a lot of people are lacking and
Yes.
really, really in need of.
And nobody else
Yeah.
can give it to you.
Yeah.
You are inherently, like I try to like be very careful. I'm like, I don't permission anybody, but I want you to have the permission, and the permission comes from internal. So
Absolutely.
we each give ourselves our own permission. Like you do not need permission from anybody else in this conversation, just yourself. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Renae, if you were to leave our listeners with like one thing, maybe one, it can be whatever you want, one action step, one
Yeah.
thing to get curious about, one point of reflection, like whatever comes to you, but what would that one thing be?
I know we talked about a lot today. There was,
Yeah.
some practical things and some more maybe philosophical-y type of things. Like there was a lot of conversation. And so I think the one thing would be just to take one piece and implement that one piece and do it slowly. Like even when we look at just the cycle, I oftentimes tell people just to start with one, even just becoming aware. Like even if you just start tracking your cycle, even if you just start asking yourself, like, what does my body need today? Those small little pieces can add up over time and make massive shifts. Not everything in your life has to shift in order to get the benefits. So whether we're looking at this like intuitive piece or nervous system, or we're looking at the cycle, just start with just the smallest little steps and let it add up over time, rather than feeling like you have to completely overhaul everything, because that will be the thing that makes the change for you.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have, when somebody's just starting to like cycle track for themselves, like I use the Natural Cycles app.
Okay.
I've been using it for a long time. I really love it. And it's like one of the only ones that's rated as an actual birth control when used properly, right? I'll have to look. I think I might even have like a referral code. I'll try to take a look. And if I do, I'll drop it in like this conversation. But do you have something like that you recommend that you love people use?
I've like strayed back and forth with the apps, because I feel like the apps, it's sometimes hard to really predict where you're going to be and what you're going to feel, because there's only a finite amount of things that the apps usually allow you to track. So if you're looking for pregnancy or not pregnancy, or like the more biological component, it's the apps are fine. But when we look at what's your productivity, what's your brain fog look like, what's your creativity feel like, the apps I feel like are oftentimes lacking in that way. And so I love using like when I was paper tracking it, or when I was tracking it in that way, I loved the paper. I have a paper tracker app I'd be happy to give to your audience that allows you to see it. And then you could put like 3 or 4 months in a row and see, oh, on day 7, every single month I was feeling this way, or I was in this amount of energy, or however it might look. That sometimes helps people see the patterns a little bit easier than in the app. So like I said, if you're tracking temperature and you're tracking those, the apps are great because they'll do that all for you. Like I have the Aura Ring. The Aura Ring tracks my temperature and tracks where my cycle's at. And that's how I kind of use it now. But when I was learning, like, where is my body and where my brain, where is everything at, the paper is just really nice to be able to see those patterns easier.
Yeah, I love that. I'd love for you to share that tracker with our listeners. And I'm also going to drop like all your links below so that everyone can figure out where to find you. Because I'm sure after this conversation, some people will want to connect. One of the things I also notice about using like technology to track things, like I have the Google Watch. I use it for like more of my health, like my heart rate variability and like things like that related to some of the conditions that I live with. And I don't have the Aura Ring, but I do know that the Aura Ring is the only one that syncs to natural cycles, like this app that I use, as a temperature, because Natural Cycles uses your temperature to determine like your ovulation and all of that. And it actually syncs with Aura and nothing else. So I've always been curious about that, but and Natural Cycles actually does let you track like your mood, your like a lot of different like aspects if you actually want to go there. But the caveat, I think, is that while these things are really helpful to start to get a sense of things and start to get like some patterns, I think we don't want to let the numbers override what we know in our body 100%. To be true.
Yep.
Right. So I think it's a really good starting point to use these things. That it really helped me get to a point where I could start to notice trends. But at this point, I honestly don't even look at it.
Yeah.
Right. I use it. I track it so that I can keep it tracked. But I don't look at the numbers. I don't track anything extra in it because I already know in my body.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Like I have my cycle in my Google Calendar, so that like when I'm scheduling or when my assistant is scheduling, I love that. She knows where things are at. But yeah, I don't. And then other than the Aura Ring's great. I look at the temperature because I know I can watch the temperature and see where things are at. And I will know like, oh, I haven't ovulated when I should have, like what's happening in my body, like where things are. And so I'll, like, as I get close to ovulation, I'll watch it closer and closer and closer. I'm like, oh, yep, there was ovulation. It corresponds with everything I'm feeling, everything in my body. Like we're good to go. And then that's about as much of the tracking that I do now.
So to get it into your Google Calendar, do you just like type it in every month? Like, oh, here's where I started to bleed. Here's where.
It's on like a repeating schedule. So each phase is in there as its own like event. And then it has however many days repeated by however many days. And then if something's off, like if, you know, like last month I had been doing some different hormone stuff and my cycle was like 10 days late, or ovulation was 10 days late. So I just move and drag and drop it so that and then it says like change all future events or whatever. And so it'll change all future forward. But in essence, it's in there repeated, which it's going to have some error when, you know, things shift and your cycle changes and things like that. But overall, it's pretty close.
I love that though, because that's one of the things I've been sitting with is like, how do I make this work with my business? And how do I look ahead at my calendar and go like, okay, 3 weeks from now, or at this time, 3 months from now, I'm going to be likely around this phase. How do I schedule things accordingly when I'm often scheduling things like 6 to 12 months out? Right.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's
So
probably
thank
going
you
to
for
impact,
that.
like, that'll impact like 6 to 12 months out. It will work great if you have a very predictable schedule or cycle.
Yeah.
If your cycle has some variance, like even 2 to 3 days, right? Like 2 to 3 days over 6 months might,
Is going to change a lot.
it could drastically change it. So
Yeah.
that far out might be a little bit trickier for you than like in this quarter. So like when with my clients, we typically are planning a quarter at a time. Quarter has a little bit less variance than maybe 6 to 12 months. 6 to 12 months, you might have a harder time really dialing in. But that's a whole other conversation we could have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Renae. So how
Yeah.
do people find you?
My favorite place to hang out is on Instagram. So it's just Renae Fieck over there on Instagram. If you have loved this conversation, I would be happy to give you a free copy of my book. If you just go over to
Oh,
reneefieck.com/free book, you just cover shipping and handling, and I will send you like a signed copy. I'll send it out to you.
sweet.
Yeah, so it's for US residents only on that one. If you're a
Okay.
non-US resident listening and you would like to listen and get in on the book, I have an audiobook version that so just send me a message and we can coordinate that for you. But yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to send you that message and I'm going
Yeah.
to get set up with that. I'm a Canadian resident. So thank you, Renee. Thank you so much. I'm going to make sure that I drop all of those links below so that everybody knows where to find you. And thank you so much for this conversation. As always, I am trusting you to take what resonates with you and leave the rest behind. Please be sure to hydrate and care for yourself well, as any of the energetic transmissions, meditations, or self-healing prompts integrate into your system in the coming days or weeks. As with all the work that I do, I ask that this aligns for the highest and best of everyone involved, and I trust that you will only receive that which is in true alignment for you at this time. If this resonated with you, I invite you to consider giving back through your likes, ratings, comments, shares, or subscribes, as those help so much on these platforms. If you're ready to go deeper than what these platforms can provide, I offer ceremonies, workshops, guided practices, and more at www.denisealyssa.com. I look forward to connecting with you there.